Hello.
Assalamu alaikum, peace and blessings to everyone. And thank you for joining us today in our Suratul Noor Sisters Conversation. This conversation is designed for not only women that are incarcerated or re-entry program, but just for women that have moved into Islam. So I guess that starts our first question. Do you prefer to be called a convert, a revert, a Muslim, a new Muslim, a transplant? Kind of what are our questions. So I'm going to ask you each to introduce yourself and then answer that question. What do you prefer to be called or referred to as? And we'll start with Samantha.
Okay, Salam alaikum. My name is Samantha Kitana. I have been Muslim since 2017. I actually converted in Alison's Quran class one night. So yeah, it's been about 5 years. I got interested in Islam back in 2015 with a lot of the political upheaval and a lot of things. You know, there was the Muslim ban and things like that. And I thought, there's no way that they can all be bad. There's no way. So from that point, I began to learn about it. I was actually in an abusive situation. I came to Oklahoma, got to learn the community here. And Alison was actually one of the first Muslims that I met out here. She was very welcoming to me, answered a lot of questions, super helpful. I personally prefer to be called a convert myself, because I think when you revert, you go back to something that you already know. And I didn't know about Islam. I didn't know any. I mean, I might have seen a Muslim here and there, but I didn't know it. I didn't know it really. If it was in my heart, I didn't have the cognition or the consciousness to put that into words until somebody put it into words and put it in front of me. So I don't feel like I could, I don't feel like I can revert back to something that I've never known. And not that I ever intend to, but if I reverted, it would be reverting back to Christianity because that's what I knew, but I converted to Islam.
Well, that makes total and complete sense. And, I wouldn't tell Alison, but I'm pretty fond of her myself. So Alison, tell us about you. What do you prefer to be called?
Yes, salam alaikum. My name is Alison Moore. First of all, I just was thinking when Samantha said I've been Muslim, you said 5 years, was that right?
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking I converted in 1993. So it's been 30 years. Oh my God, I feel so old. And I just call myself a convert. I converted to Islam. I understand I completely agree with Samantha's thinking on the term revert. But, I think the thinking is that we were all Muslim in the heavenly realm before we were born. And so, there's a verse in the Quran that says that we all bore witness to God. So, and that seed of faith is like in our heart. And so that when we're born, we have this God awareness that's within us, that spark of light, whatever you want to call it, that's in your soul. And so I think that's where they call it, revert comes from. But for me, with the Christian background and the church background, I'm a convert. I converted. And it's kind of funny because I did not want to convert. I don't know if you guys felt that way. I thought it was funny too how Samantha said, with all the upheaval about Islam and Muslims and terrorism and stuff like that, there were so many people that converted because of that. Like
yes,
started researching, and that's kind of how when I converted, people didn't know what Islam was. It was like some really foreign or overseas religion, and so. I had the intention of converting the person I was currently married to at that time, which was an Arab man. I had the intention of converting him to Christianity. So, yeah.
That's on you.
I was like, okay, I got to read the Quran and I got to find the problems in this book, right? Like, how can I tear this book down? And then I had a very rude awakening.
Wow.
Which a spiritual epiphany, oh my God, if I don't convert, I'm denying the truth. And so I ended up converting. I didn't want to convert. I'll be honest. Alhamdulillah, I'm glad now, but I
Yeah.
don't want to give up the Christmas trees and, the special, or just even saying I'm Muslim, that was really difficult. Is that
Really.
difficult for you all?
It really was. So for me, I actually didn't know any Muslims when I became Muslim. Um, and I actually preferred just to be called a Muslim. My grandfather used to tell me all the time that labels are only good for soup and vegetables. And so I just never, I think part of my conversion led me to the path of I'm just a Muslim. How I got here is irrelevant. I was born in Montana, but I've been in Oklahoma for 40 plus years. And so I'm an Oklahoman, just an Oklahoman. So therefore I am just a Muslim.
Yeah. Did you wear the headscarf at first? Because I didn't wear a headscarf for like 10 years. I didn't tell anybody I was Muslim. I was like scared. I was hiding it.
It was the hardest journey. So I actually did. I wore, as a Black woman, I wore a lot of head wraps, very Afrocentric to begin with. And so had a very, different kind of hairstyle, wore ball fade and big hoop earrings, the bamboo earrings, at least 2 pair, kind of thing. And so wearing the hijab was, it just felt natural to me. It just was this, it just was for me.
Yeah.
But the battle for me came in that there were people that when I first came out as a Muslim, there were people that would tell me, oh, I know this girl I work with and she's a Muslim and she says you don't have to wear the hijab, you're doing too much. I know a person that lives next door to me and they're Muslim and they drink beer and they don't wear hijabs and you doing too much. And so it was difficult. And how did you word things, without tearing down someone else or saying something negative to someone else? How did you do those things? And so very quickly I learned, well, this is my scarf, my choice, my body, my choice, my head, my choice, my business, my choice. And so it was difficult, but I can't even remember, and I've been Muslim for almost 20 years, and I can't remember a time not having my head covered. And it is such a comfort to me. So I will tell you a funny story about my hijab, and then I'm sure you two have stories about it. So I'm one of those really super hard-headed kids. A lot. I have to be shown everything, and usually, in a bad way. So I decided at one point, I was hearing so much, you don't have to wear this hijab, you don't have to wear this. And a lot of times it was by Muslims that were telling me I didn't have to cover.
Wow.
And so I had gotten so frustrated with it, I just decided I was going to take my hijab off. And I was like, Yallah, if this is for me, then you're going to have to show me. You're going to have to prove it to me. And, who am I to tell Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what he's got to prove to me, in my infancy, of being a Muslim. So I went to the same barbershop with my kids all the time and had been going there for years for both of my boys. And then myself, because again, I wore buffet. And so, and for those that don't know, very short haircut. And so I was at the barbershop, and usually when I went in with my hijab, no one questioned me really in the African-American community, in the Black community, from being Muslim, not being Muslim, any of that. But when I would go in with my scarf on, the conversation would change. So if they were talking about something that was explicit or, whatever, way out there, they would change the conversation to sports or politics or, something. And if you've never been to a Black barbershop, you should try that. And then secondly, if there was not an empty seat, someone would get up and give me their seat, And so in my audacity to challenge Allah, I went in one day with no hijab on. And it was full of people and there were no seats. And I was standing there waiting for someone to give me a seat. And it didn't happen. No one gave me a seat. And then their conversation was getting darker and darker and worse and worse. And I was like, my goodness, what's going on? So finally I said, hey, there's a woman standing here. What, what's going
Yeah.
on? So I get into the barber seat and the guy said, well, before we knew you as a woman of faith and we knew to watch our mouth. He said, but when you came in without your scarf, we figured if you didn't care, we didn't care. You were just a round the way sister. And it was this knock in the head, of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about being as a believing woman. This is a garment.
What's interesting about that is I do have a lot of friends that wear the headscarf that tell me before they wore it, they did not get the level of respect from non-Muslim men in the community that once they started wearing it, people would open the door more and cater to them. And it's like they do see you as exactly what you're saying, a spiritual or a religious person. And for some reason, you get a higher level of respect, inshallah, most of the time.
Yeah, but that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, without being disrespectful. We're in a society of feelings. So I don't hurt anybody's feelings, but that really is what he says. Samantha, tell me about your journey. Anything just kind of stick out to you about?
I want to know. Wait, did you just put the headscarf on immediately, Samantha? Because it took me years. Like, how did you deal with that?
I actually wore it before because I wanted to see what it felt like.
Wow.
I went with some sisters. We went to Jason's Deli to eat. And I wanted to, try to see what I could find and how I could wear it, like on YouTube videos and stuff. And so I wore it a few times before. But I still I was constantly like fidgeting with it and, pulling on it. And so I had every intention of going home one night and sitting down and watching some YouTube videos. And I had my pins, which I use magnets now, but using pins and just playing around. However, before it got to that point, I had Quran class that night. It was one of Alison's Quran class, I believe, at the Hardesty Library.
Yeah.
And so we were there, and I had my notebook, I had my Quran, and I was sitting there and I was ready. And then I realized I didn't have my pen. So I leaned over to get the pen out of my bag, and the whole hijab just went. And I was like, and I just froze. And this lady, that was in the class too, she goes, hold on, I got you. So she comes back around and she said, been driving me nuts the whole class, kid. And she proceeds to fix my hijab and do it, the way that she did hers. And I was so embarrassed. I was so glad that she did that, but I could have just sunk right through the floor. I went home that night, and my friend YouTube taught me a thing or two that night. So
you didn't have a hard time putting on the headscarf? Because I still have a hard time with the headscarf. It's not my favorite thing, but I do it because I want to please God, right? It's one of the sacrifices you make.
Oh, absolutely. So for me, it was finding the right weight, the right texture. And I will tell you, really, my struggle for wearing the hijab has come in the last couple of years. My good friend menopause has shown up, and the hot flashes and the scarves and the fabric and the just stop touching me is a battle with the scarves. And I remember, like Samantha, getting some that were really beautiful and shiny, and really the only times that I didn't have a problem with them is when they were sitting in my lap at home. I mean, anytime I put that on my head, it was all over the place. I couldn't, or I remember having headaches so horribly, such bad headaches. And I went to the doctor and I said, I'm having migraines or pre-migraines, or I don't know what's going on. I'm ready to chop my own head off with a spoon. It is just so bad. And he said, have you thought about your scarf? And he took his finger and he said, excuse me. And he put his finger in just the side of my scarf, and he couldn't get his finger in there. And my face was so squished. And he said, your scarf is too tight. But I was, like Alison said, in such a state of wanting to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How was I going to wear this? And because it was so slick, how did I keep it on my head? And so it was a battle. And, still, sometimes it is a battle. And I have a million green scarves, but I can promise you I will buy a shirt and it won't be the right color green for any of them. So I just ended up with a million scarves. And the battle for me has been African-American scarves, in an African-American style Afrocentristic head wrap or a hijab. And which one of those do I wear? In the winter, I am like Alison. I cover my neck, I put on a head cover, and I'm off to the races. And in the summertime, it's too hot for my neck to be covered. So, I prefer the long V-neck shirts, but then getting a scarf long enough to cover that. So, these scarves are definitely our test, our battle.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
a little piece of fabric.
But I do want to point out something, because I didn't know we were going to jump into the headscarf discussion so quickly in this podcast. And I do want to point out that I think when we convert, some people a lot of Muslims have the experience of, hey, sister, you got to do this and pray and fast and da-da-da. And now you got to give up, the pork, the alcohol, your boyfriend, your haram stuff in your house. You got to change your decor. You got to give up your statues. There's so many things to do that some people have a mental breakdown. They can't handle it and they leave. And yes, you have to believe in La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, that there's only one God and Muhammad is prophet, peace be upon him, and you have to believe in the 5 pillars. But from that point, I tell people, just take baby steps. Start the prayers, because it's super important. At least be praying, 1 prayer a day. If you can do the 5, for me, alhamdulillah, the prayers were easy. The fasting, it was a little bit difficult, but I was still able to do it. It was the headscarf that was the big jihad for me.
Yeah, and it is, baby steps. And I wish someone had told me about the baby steps. I have never been financially affluent. And so to break that down, I've never had money. And so for me, clothes, were a big, I wore a lot of t-shirts. And so how did I cover my arms? And so I will say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed me to be super creative. And so I went to the Dollar Tree. I bought men's dress socks for $1, cut the toes out and put them on as sleeves, because at that time I didn't know we could buy sleeves. And so I wore my hijabs and my men's socks on my arms, and the foot part fit perfectly on my elbow. So I was in the game.
Oh my God.
It is the baby steps and knowing what to wear. And do you wear an abaya? Do you wear pants?
Oh, yeah.
Do you wear? It was so.
Yeah. I was terrified to go to the masjid. I was so scared to go to the mosque. I was worried about people telling me what to do and how to dress. And I didn't even have a dress when I converted that went down past my shins. I didn't have anything that went to the floor. I didn't own anything like that. So, Samantha, what was the hardest thing for you?
Honestly, it's still the prayers. It's still the prayers. Getting myself into the habit of it. I try to be gentle with myself. I try to, my niyyah is absolutely to pray, but those nafs get in the way. Your ego will always get in the way, and we find out in Ramadan, what's really the shaitan and what's really your own ego. And your friendly neighborhood Samantha had a come to Allah moment several times in Ramadan. It is hard still for me to pray. Making dua, it's as natural as breathing. But I think too that what people fail to tell converts a lot of the time is that Islam took 23 years for Islam to become what it is.
Yeah.
I'm not going to beat myself up if I go out one day and I don't always cover my head the right way. I'm not going to beat myself up about that, because I know my niyyah and I know my heart and I know what my intentions are, and so does God. So, but the prayers,
and I love that. That is excellent advice.
Because I know people who have gone to the mosque and they're like, "Oh, sister, take off your makeup, take off your fingernail polish, and
Been
you
there.
need to cover your face, wear your niqab. And then they're like, oh my God, this isn't for me. I can't do this. And then they never come back.
Well, I
Yeah.
remember going to the masjid, and not, again, I didn't know any Muslims when I became Muslim. So I remember calling the mosque and saying, I think I had read some information about Islam and it just resonated with me. And I wanted to be one of these people. And so I called the mosque and I said, so I don't even know what to wear. What do I wear? And they said, dress like you would dress if you were going to church. Got you. So I put on the dress that comes to your knees, the little suit jacket, the little heels and everything. And I go to the mosque and I sit on the floor and nobody spoke to me and nobody spoke English. And like Alison said, I left before they started and I thought I would never come back. I thought this was not for me. This is absolutely not for me. What was I thinking? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really tugged at me to give it one more try. And I did. But I think one of the things that I love about you two is you are so uniquely and unapologetically yourself. And that's like one of the biggest messages I think that people should get. I was told, and as a matter of fact, I'm still told, I was just told yesterday that, sister, you're too aggressive, you're too loud, you're too emotional, you're too this, you're too that, always with the what I'm too much of, and I've learned in these 50 plus years that if I'm too much for you, then just don't be with me.
Right.
Right. Yeah. That self-confidence. I think it goes back to what kind of Samantha was alluding to, is that you have to get to the point where, to me, I say, okay, baby steps. And am I constantly, as I grow and spiritually progress, getting closer to God? Yeah. I cannot, when I first converted, I could not do all the things I'm doing now. There's no way. It would have been overwhelming. And I think that people face that. And you have to get to the point where you're like, okay, I have a relationship with my Creator. I'm at peace with that. And I am happy with where I am, who I am, and what am I doing as a Muslim. Yes. And if others are going to criticize that, that's their problem, because this deen is just between me and him.
Exactly. I want to expand on that if I can, Alison. I think as converts, it is so important to have other converts around you and American converts around you, because there are so many blurred lines between culture and religion. And there's so many things. My husband's Arab, and we have definitely had our differences, but with me becoming, I told him, I said, I studied Islam for 2 years before I converted. Don't come for me. Don't come for me.
All right.
Pack a lunch. So, but I know what I know what I'm talking about. And I'm at the point, if somebody tells me something is Islam and it don't hit right, I'm going to look it up. And if it still don't hit right and I can't find it, chuck it in.
I find most of the time, if it doesn't hit your heart right, there's something wrong. Like 99% of the time, you can find out
trust
that
yourself,
what this person told you.
And that was actually with Alison. I was told that I could not touch the Quran in any shape, form, or fashion during my cycle. Oh, wow. Any Quran. It didn't matter what it was. Well, we went to Quran class and the inevitable happened during the Quran class. And I was literally like holding the sides of my notebook around it so that I wouldn't touch it. Oh. And I dropped it right at Alison and Crystal's feet. And I said, I'm so sorry. I can't pick this up. And Alison kind of looked at me, and Crystal did too. And I said, I can't pick it up because I had my cycle during the class. And they both looked at me like, oh, honey, no. No.
Right, this one was in English. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's so many of these little things as converts, that the lines are blurred, or, not having an American convert around is I think is difficult. So I didn't. And there were things that I thought, these people are insane. What is wrong with Muslims? They're They're insane. So perfect example, I went to a class at the mosque and I had to go to the restroom. So I go into the restroom and I see all of these plastic plants. This is important. Plastic plants and pictures of plants, all around the place. Then when you go into the restroom stall, you see water pots. And I'm like, are these people nuts? What in the heck are they watering? There's water pots everywhere and there's no plants. What's wrong with these people? And so, I walked with this and thought that Muslims were insane for like 6 months. 6 months. I had no clue. And so finally, I was talking to a sister who happened to be from Pakistan. And I told her, I just, I am not a person that bites my tongue. And so I told her, I said, look, I don't, somebody's going to have to explain to me what you're doing with these water pots when you have plastic plants. I mean, is there something like wrong with you? And she cracked up and then she explained what this was for, what stinja was, what these things were. And I was like, man, I have been a Muslim by this point, I think 6 months, almost a year. And I didn't know because we have these conversations about the heart and your actions and your intentions, but we don't have real life conversations.
Yeah.
That converts that, that we have, and I think they're important. I think they're so incredibly important for us.
Yeah, you've got to have somebody to have that conversation with. And when I used to give tours at the mosque, people would come in and ask, "What are all those water pots?" Christians would, or Jews. What are all the water pots in the bathroom? And then even some family members think, it's kind of weird. You wash off after you go to the bathroom, but I have to bring this up. I have a perfect example. I said, if you went out in your yard and you picked up dog poop and you touched it with your hands, could you just wipe it off with some toilet paper and be fine? No. So why is it okay on your own body just to use toilet paper when washing is what we would prefer, with our hands? Why not wash the whole body? And now we know medically and scientifically that it's so much better. It reduces the bacterial levels, keeps the person cleaner, less, prone to getting some type of, infection.
And it's so funny that overseas there are the bidets and stuff,
Yes.
and we are just now kind of getting around to that, So Islam, when we look at things, even when you look during COVID, how perfectly Islam fit into that. We covered our mouths, we washed our noses and our mouths out, we washed our hands. And, many of the people were like, oh my gosh, I have to wash my hands 5-6 times a day. And it's wudu. It's wudu.
Yeah.
Welcome to our world.
Yeah. And I don't think of sinus infections.
Yeah.
You clean your nose out. Yeah.
Yes. So, it's interesting for me to see all of these transitions, how things fit so perfectly, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just as in his infinite wisdom and being, put these things into place for us. But many people are just like me, and we got to learn the hard way. It's got to learn the hard way.
On the subject of cleanliness, I was when I converted, I was kind of shocked to find out, that we don't pray when we have our menstrual cycles. And I wondered for the longest time why that was. I assumed that it was a lack of being able to make wudu because you could not successfully enter and keep a state of wudu in that time. However, I came across some things, I can't remember if it was TikTok or Instagram, it absolutely blew my mind, said that the way that they had heard women explain it was that during that time, we feel awful. We don't look the greatest. I still get acne. Like, you
cramps.
don't,
Cramps.
So yes. Oh boy, do we ever. So if you think about it this way, during that time, if you have children or a job or a husband or any sort of obligation, do they really and truly make it any easier on you? No. But the Creator gave us the ability to sit down and relax. And I think myself personally, with everything that I've read on that subject, that it has more to do with the mercy of Allah and less to do with the state of cleanliness and wudu.
Yeah, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and surely after every hardship comes ease. It is hard to be a woman. It is hard to have, all the responsibilities, and, a lot of us are not stay-at-home, moms.
Right.
Son recently passed, and I now kind of question, how did I get everything done that I did and still take care of this amazing little boy? And so there wasn't any ease except in that time. The ease came when I didn't have to get up so incredibly early.
Yes.
Just
and after childbirth, you have about 30 days after childbirth. It is such a blessing, because at that time you're not getting sleep, you're exhausted, and so it's kind of it's a reset, it's a break for you. A lot of women have called it going on vacation. Like, I'm on vacation, I can't pray right now.
Yes.
You can still make supplication to God, but you just don't have to hit all those 5 prayers that, sometimes can be so challenging.
And we can find in those moments, I found, so my little one was nonverbal. And he was quadriplegic, so he was exempt, from getting up to pray. But this child never slept past Fajr. He would always wake up to make sure that I was up for Fajr. And so I was like, it became our running joke, not this week, sleep in,
Right.
because he was still waking up. And it was funny to me. I was talking to a sister just a few months ago, and she was saying her sons were younger, and she had not had this, physiological conversation with them. And her son came in one day and told her how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loved her, and he missed her at Fajr, and that she needed to get her life together, because he just didn't understand why dad was up making prayers and mom was still in the bed.
Right.
It was like, I'm either gonna A, have to have this conversation, or B, I'm just gonna have to get up and fake it, which is what am I gonna do? So I thought that was so hilarious. But these are some real life conversations and issues that when we convert, we don't have to be super Muslim. It's baby stuff. I would encourage, your clothing, maybe don't wear the Budweiser t-shirt anymore, but
the mini skirt.
Or
your hot pants or whatever they may be.
Absolutely. Or if you're going to wear them, put some leggings on under them. If you're going to wear leggings, please wear a shirt that covers your behind. How do you incorporate your conversation? I was studying, and one of the extra things that I learned and I loved was there's so much information on our best friends here, to be able to study every day. And so there's not ever a time when you shouldn't be able to study something, because I couldn't afford the Quran classes. And I live in a different part of the state than you guys do. And there weren't free classes. So another thing that people don't know about me is I wear a hearing aid. And so a big deal for me was this all day long. And I was like, what am I going to do? Because the fabric was rubbing against my hearing aid. So all I heard all day long was this shushing sound, which was getting on my nerves. It was working me to death. But it was, how do I figure this out? So my daughter was with me most of the time. And my daughters are like the best. My son as well, just the best at helping me with conversations. So I don't hear direction. So if something falls or something happens or whatever, I can't tell what direction that came from. So when people get behind me and they talk to me, my daughter would just kind of turn me in that direction and say, oh yeah, my mom loves that topic of oatmeal. Help me out there. But one of the other things that was different for me when I became Muslim was the difference of being a Southern Baptist where we spoke during the service. So the pastor would say, and God is a good God. And you would say, amen. Yes,
Amen.
he is. So my first Jummah, I will never forget, Imam Imad Inchasi, say that 10 times. He was giving a khutbah and he was talking about the beauty and the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loved us and wanted to connect with us. And I was just so excited to hear this. And it was just so touching to my heart. I was like, yes, Lord. And everybody looked at me like, astaghfirullah.
Right, yeah.
What is this chick doing? And I didn't understand. I didn't understand how this man is talking about the goodness of God and how good he is to us and for us and how he has aligned everything for us. And there was no one in there that was going to say amen about it.
Yeah.
I was like, what is wrong with these people?
Right, yeah, exactly.
My
One of
mother
the things we haven't.
So yeah, I understand.
So hard.
One of the things we haven't talked about though is family. For me, when I converted, I think they thought it was a fad and that I would, return to Christianity in a few months. It's very embarrassing for certain family members to say that they had, a Muslim family member. And so they would hide it, which made me feel more insecure, and I would hide my faith as well. And then even when my husband and I got married, we had an in-law that called and said, I'm not coming to the wedding because I don't want to come to any wedding where there's going to be swords and turbans and, like,
oh my God.
Yeah.
We were supposed to have swords?
I missed that part.
Yeah.
Man,
Terrorism
missed it.
at the wedding.
Gosh.
So
oh my goodness.
It took me a long time to own my Islam, I would have to say. For me, I mean, it was difficult. It was, and then even during the Christmas time, I think it probably took me maybe 10 to 12 years to where Eid was more of a party and more of a community event and something that made my heart really happy. Because at first I didn't have the friend base, I didn't have the community base. So I'd fast during Ramadan, we'd have Eid come, we'd go to the place and pray. And then I wasn't invited over to anybody's house. In fact, during Ramadan, when we'd have the iftar dinners, my husband and I were not invited over to anybody's house for like 10 years. So we started creating our own community, inviting converts and having an open house. And that's when things really changed. But it literally took years for me to be
it's still taking years for me. And I talked to in my capacity as a person in the community, I have the blessing, the honor to be able to talk to many converts. And it's that same conversation. It's that, if they are not married to someone of a foreign culture, then, if they are, they're invited to other things sometimes, most of the times. If they're not, they don't. And my family, I don't know about Samantha, but my family was not very happy about me being Muslim for many years. As a matter of fact, my mother and I speak on different events together to talk about, how difficult this was for both of us. And I remember becoming Muslim and my mom telling me, you're not going to wear that rag on your head into my house. And so I would have to put my hijab on to drive to my mother's house.
Yeah.
Get to the porch and tie it behind my head as soon as somebody was opening the door so that it just looked fashionable and not, traditional. And then when we would leave, I would go outside on the porch and I would duck behind one of the pillars at my mom's house and put my hijab on and then go get in the car.
Boy, I did the same thing. I'd have it on the way there. As soon as we pulled in the driveway, I'd take it off, fix my hair, go in the house.
Yes.
So I wouldn't cause tension.
And I wore it at work. And, very small community. I was a state employee. We had prayer luncheons. And I remember one of the most hurtful things to me was a person that I prayed with and stayed with. I mean, I was, I thought this person was my ride or die. there was actually a group of them, and we would get together and we would pray. I mean, we had traveled together, we had done all of these things together. And when I became Muslim, I was an outcast. And someone invited me to lunch one time and told me I was no longer her friend and I was no longer welcome at her home. That she had a sign up in her house and it said, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." And that I had abandoned that mission and I was no longer her friend. And,
God, why would you ever convert back after that?
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And just shortly after that, I had my youngest, Jakari. He's born this beautiful, typical child. And even in that, I had him by myself. I was alone, and on the third day, my son had a massive stroke. And, thus began this long journey for us. And I think, one of the conversations we'll have in a future conversation is grief, something we all know far too well. But, I remember trying to find a comfort spot, trying to find a safe space to work through what now was going to be my life with this complex care child. And I remember a Baptist minister telling me that this was my punishment, that this child and this disability was my punishment because I was now Muslim. And I remember sitting there and thinking, what kind of God do you serve? God does not play whack-a-mole with kids. What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Why would you want to be in a faith that believes this, that believes that God is this monster that's waiting for us to mess up? I can promise you 5 minutes after I've made Fajr, I have probably messed up in some way. And it is the grace and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we continue, but it was hard. So Samantha, did you have problems with your family when you first became Muslim?
So, my closest relative at that time, was my sister. I was getting ready to bring her out here. And, I had told her that I was interested in it and that I wanted to say Shahada. And she goes, okay, she just really wasn't, one way or another. So, she told me, she said, if that's what makes you happy, she said, I just want to make sure that if you do get married, that you're not going to marry somebody that's going to run over you and tell you that the religion is something that it isn't. She said, I know that you won't do that. She said, but I want you to make sure that what you're to. And
that is a whole topic we need to have, is marrying in the faith and the possibility for abuse, religious abuse or cultural abuse.
Yes.
We have to talk about that at some point in time, because it happens to a lot of women.
But then my mom, being Pentecostal, she, I had turned away from Christianity quite some time ago. I wasn't Muslim, I wasn't Christian, I really wasn't anything. I was trying to survive in the situation that I was in. And when I finally broke down and told my mom, all she said was, Samantha, I'm so glad that you found your way back to God. And that's all she said.
So
that is awesome.
That's all she said. Now, brother, he didn't come at me sideways, but he had a lot of questions. Our conversations was just like voice notes, and he was like, I'm serious about this. He's like, I really want to know. He's like, does that mean that you have to kill me because I'm not Muslim? And I'm like, no, that's definitely not what that means. It's definitely not. And I went through and I pointed out what was taken out of context and what was real and what wasn't, things like that. And I even talked to him about the freedoms that women had after Islam became prevalent. I said, women had access to their own money. In this country, women did not have access to their own money till the 70s, just 10 years before I was born.
Yes.
And property ownership.
Husbands. So,
and that's when credit scores came into play. I want you to know, because men still didn't believe that we had sense enough to manage our own money,
Exactly.
So wasn't Islam just, absolutely perfect, for us?
It is a way of life. It's not just like a religion and what you believe. I think that it's a good example for all of mankind. Clearly, there's so much scientific research that has, that the Quran knew, that, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew 1400 years ago. And science is, look what we found. I'm like, no, no, y'all didn't find nothing. It's been there. So y'all didn't find nothing, I promise.
Yeah, my grandmother used to say, baby, there's nothing new under the sun.
Exactly.
And truly there isn't. And it's so funny that being Southern Black, and you can hear the Southern in Samantha, but, being Southern and Black, there were so many things growing up that we did that are just the same as Islam. So I remember culturally, you would ask somebody if they were going to do something and they would say, yeah, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise.
Yep.
And so Lord willing, inshallah.
Inshallah,
and then I learned, historically what the creek don't rise meant. And it was in the sundown towns and towns where Black people had to stay on the other side of railroad tracks or creeks. If it rained and the water rose, they wouldn't be able to get to the Black side of town. And so, but that became so prevalent. And I knew, growing up, what Lord willing and the creek don't rise. So that was kind of in my mantra to say, someone would say something, I'd say, Lord willing. So a lot of things, even in the African-American culture, the Black culture, were very synonymous with things in Islam. My brother is retired military, but when I became Muslim, he was active duty. And we had taken a picture. I have a brother and a sister. And so we had taken a family photo and I had a hijab on in this picture. And he put this picture up and he told me that someone had something, very negative to say about the fact that his sister had a hijab on, and so my brother, knowing exactly who his sister is, said, I'll give you $1 if you call her and say it to her. Because that conversation is not going to go like you think. But I think one of the things I have found is Islam has given me a sense of exactly who I am. It has given me the basis to research. And there is a verse in the Bible that says, lean not unto thy own understanding, but in all thy ways acknowledge the Lord, rightly dividing the word.
Yes.
And that was always one of my favorite Bible verses. And it was so perfect for me in Islam, because it was, don't think about what you think, but trust in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala thinks. His speech is the best speech. And the example of the Prophet, peace be upon him, is the best example. And so we don't have to lean into what we think, we should do today. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written all of this out for us, and it's very perfect for us. And so, ladies, I am so glad and so excited for future conversations. So in wrapping up, if the person next to you were just becoming Muslim, what would be 2 tips that you would give them? Samantha, we'll start with you.
Be gentle with yourself. Don't berate yourself. And honestly, something that I wish I had done is to set like tangible goals, to have a spreadsheet or something that you're looking at. Set those goals for yourself. And even if you don't meet them, you, by creating that spreadsheet, have created a niyyah. And it was your niyyah and your intention to do those things.
Yes.
And you tried. And if something happened and you couldn't, then you try again tomorrow, inshallah.
Inshallah. And Alison, what would be your 2 tips for someone?
Well, I mentioned one of them, which is like Samantha said, take it easy on yourself, baby steps. Take baby steps and know where you're going. But I think the other important thing for me that really, I suffered from bipolar depression for years, even after my conversion. And it wasn't until I started reading the Quran in Arabic and really working on the dhikr, or the praising God using his names, that I started having a big spiritual change, a closeness to my creator. So I would really recommend that whether you get on YouTube or, you get a teacher locally, or you just get online, is that you start learning how just to say the first chapter, the opening chapter, Fatiha, and what we call the Quds, and that you learn those and work on learning them in Arabic, and then get with the group that will teach you how to praise God, because spiritually there's some things that happen in the heart. Maybe that's a completely another, topic to talk about. But when that light enters the heart and it opens you up, and all of a sudden you're now worshiping God at a different spiritual level, it's so beautiful and exciting.
Nor of the heart.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. And I think that my two tips would be, of course, singing along with the chorus here is baby steps. That seems to be a common thread. Don't beat yourself up. But I think the second thing I would encourage people, or advice I would give them, is don't forget where you came from.
Yes.
I remember having a dinner and I was so excited. I was married at the time, and I was so excited to have another convert family at my house for dinner. And very Southern. So, collard greens with smoked turkey and all of these wonderful things, and yams. And I just went all out. I did all Southern, down to the peach tea and peach cobbler, homemade. And the person looked at me, and the husband demanded that we sit in another room. He really didn't want us to sit at the same table. Although I was sitting with my husband on one side, he could sit with his wife on the other side. He wasn't going for that. And he wanted Muslim food. And I thought, what is Muslim food? I'm Muslim. I cooked it in the Muslim food, and he wanted biryani and all of these things that I don't make. I do a great job at buying it, but I don't make it. And it's not my culture, and I stay in my lane.
Oh my
And
God.
so love yourself enough to be unapologetically you. You don't have to have an Arab accent. You don't have to speak in Urdu. You don't have to, wear, a different culture clothes if you don't want to. If
that's right.
do you. But, don't feel like that is an obligation of Islam for you to do that. Love yourself and the skin you're in. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us so uniquely us for a reason. And he called out of each group someone specifically to teach to that group, to speak to that group, and so maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has called you and your test and your trials today that you have been through to speak to teach to someone else. You grow through what you go through.
Yes.
And so being able to go through and grow through in an effort to bring someone else forward. Well, sisters, I am so glad we had this conversation. Please stay tuned into us for more conversations that we'll be having about sisters and conversions and how these things affect us. We love you. We are grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this gathering today and for you joining us. Thank you so much, Jazakallah khairan, for both of you coming. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.